Hello, chess family. It's me, National Master Jesse James, and it's time for another installment of Bobby Fischer's My 60 Most Memorable Games. In this one, it's going to be Fischer versus Benko, and I like to call it the Knight Attack. Well, here we go. This is a very beautiful game by Fischer. We started with e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes, knight f6, knight c3. We have the 4-knight Sicilian. And here, one of the most popular moves by black is going to be d6, just playing an old line here. Now here you can transpose into many different lines here, so you can play g6 and go into a dragon variation. You could play the e5, this Sheshnikov or Lasker Pelican variation, and of course, like I said, just very basic and standard here is just play d6 here. And Fischer plays an interesting move here. He plays bishop to c4. Against this myself, I like to play a little bit more robust with the bishop g5, threatening to take and try to give these double pawns. And, well, it depends on the player to see what they're going to be playing here, but typically you'll see like e6 or even e5 at some point too. With that being said, there's nothing wrong with Fischer's idea. Bishop c4, queen to b6, attacking the knight over here on d4, and here the knight goes to e2. Now, in typical Sicilians, the knight typically goes back to b3 here, but the problem is because you put your bishop here on c4, well, where does the bishop retreat to now? So Fischer goes ahead and says, you know what, I'm going to transfer this knight over to the king side. So knight d goes to e2. Also, for those that are a little bit beginner and with Sicilian information, taking on c6 is a very bad idea. The only thing that this does here is, well, after b takes on c6, it's going to start giving black the advantage. Here, black will go e6 and d5, and he's going to trade off your only pawn. And, well, when you play b takes, this pawn will be in the center very soon, trade off. That black has two center pawns, and you've also given them an open b file here. So it's very, very unlikely, or very, it's not the most accurate move here for you to take on c6. So Fischer wisely goes ahead and plays the knight back. Pawn goes to e6, castles over here, bishop to e7, and bishop b3. Always a good idea to have all your pieces defended. So I really like this move of bishop b3. Always recommending it to my students. Castles happens over here. The next piece we want to move is our bishop. But here Fischer goes ahead and says, I'm going for your king right now. And he plays king to h1. A weird looking move if you're not used to this. But here in Sicilians, especially from the white perspective, white typically tries to either open up the center. Most of the time you want to keep it closed because you're trying to do a kingside attack. So you're going to go kingside attack and then keep the center closed. Black, vice versa, wants to open up the center and then, of course, attack on the queen side. It's really easy to tell where your best play is going to be at because you have open files there. So here you can see right here, this open file here. This is exactly where black wants to play. And the old saying is, whenever they attack on the wing, such as the king side, you attack in the center. So that's why white wants to keep the center closed and attack on the king side. So this king h1 is right on task. He wants to play f4, maybe go f5, maybe go e5. It depends on what black is playing here. And I do want to mention here, the bishop is reframed from going bishop b3. A lot of people will see the queen on b6 and say, ooh, let me put my bishop b3. This is not good for you. We just said that black wants to push the queenside pawns, right? So here, a6 and b5 are very good ways to start creating pressure or gaining space on the queen side. The only thing you do with bishop b3 is help them move the queen up the way so that they can then start pushing these pawns. So Fischer wisely does not put the bishop to e3 to attack the queen. It's such a natural looking move, and black loves this because the bishop on e3 is not very well placed. Bishop on g5, maybe f4 might be better, attacking this weak d6 pawn, or the pin over here on the bishop over here on e7. All right, let's continue. Knight a5 gets played. Black wastes no time, or actually they do waste time. What do I mean by that? Here, black is trying to hunt down this bishop. This bishop is not that good anyways, although grabbing the bishop here is not something bad, but here you're going to see him lose a lot of time because of this. Something maybe better was probably just bringing out the bishop and bringing out the rook to start counterplay as soon as possible. Also, most times you don't want to take on b3 here with your knight. Most of the time you want to put your rook to c8 and then your knight to c4 to put pressure on b2. I remember when I was younger, I used to do this all the time, but after a takes b3, or even c takes b3, you're only actually helping out the rooks over here. And, well, these pawns are really hard to attack, and as I mentioned earlier, black's main counterplay is to attack on the queen side. These double pawns here become very hard for that. All right, Fischer's not going to waste any time. He knows his plan. He's going for kingside attack. Bishop g5, developing with a threat. Queen to c5 here. And another interesting move here. Looks like it's putting pressure on the bishop. Pawn to f4. e5, f5 ideas. This is the exact reason why king h1 was played. And pawn to b5. Again, black was hoping that the bishop would go to e3 so the queen would move out the way. So queen c5 gets played for this kind of b4 stuff. And knight c4, definitely a better idea. Here comes Fischer with his knights. This is why I like to call it the knight attack. The knight goes to g3 here. Pawn to b4. And now I will task you with our first question. White to move. What do you do here? All right, if you're thinking about moving this knight, you're on the right track, but always trying to make a threat. And unfortunately, wherever you move your knight to now, it's just not going to be any good. Remember, Fischer likes to do kingside attacks. Knight a4, not a bad idea. After queen c7 here, black does hold a nice little advantage here. Well, if you think about it like this, where's the best place for this knight to move to? That might help you find the answer. All right, hopefully you had push pause. Hopefully you tried to figure this out. What was the move here? The best place for the knight was to go to e4. You can't go there. There's a pawn in the way. Then make room. A lot of times in chess what happens is we know the best squares, but we always just dissuade it just because there's a piece in the way. Or maybe even moving backwards pieces. Do not be that kind of chess player. Find the best square and get your piece to it. So here, what do you play? Pawn to e5, a beautiful idea. Attacking the knight and doing a moving out the way so that the knight, a clearance move, so the knight can go to e4. Okay, so in the game, black went ahead and played d takes e5. What's wrong with taking the knight? You could take the knight, just know your king side's going to be messed up. E takes on f6. You can go bishop takes or g takes. It really does not matter here because after bishop takes, g takes, you can see that knight e4 here is just going to win back your pawn. d6 is weak, f6 is weak. All these squares are just so weak here that nothing can be good. And the same thing will happen if you take back with the g pawn. Here, bishop goes to h6 for a free tempo. Most likely the rook will go to h8 if you want to get check really badly here. This is what you'll do. But here the king has to go to h8 and you can just grab the rook here for free. All right, back to the game. Back to the game. Here after e5 got played, pawn takes and now the perfect timing. What do you play? Bishop takes on f6 first here. Yes, you could have played knight c to e4 here, but the queen is defending this bishop. So here you're going to make some unwanted trades. So here bishop takes on f6. Pawn takes. If you had taken with the bishop, you're only asking for a tempo to attack this bishop over here. After the queen runs back to e7, then we have knight h5, and this bishop is just going to be getting some double pawns over here. And you have to be careful because, again, after something like bishop b7, g7's weak. Knight e takes on f6, and you don't want to take back with their pawn because, well, check and then mate. These tricky knights, one of my favorite pieces in chess. So, knight c e4. Queen to d4. Of course, his nice opponent, Benko, here is asking, hey, would you like to queen trade? And you could pretty much hear Fischer just yelling at him, no. Queen h5, let's go for this queenside attack. And perfect timing to help bring the rook into the game with a tempo off the queen. Okay, here we go. Knight takes on b3. Again, just a wasted move here. White to move. What do you play? Beautiful idea here. Queen to h6. Isn't this just a free rook? It is a free rook. Go ahead and take it. E takes on f4. Of course, he does not take it. There's something amiss here. Can you figure out the idea of queen to h6? In 2 moves, you will see it. That's why black plays e takes on f4 here. What was the idea? The g7 square is the checkmate square. So after e takes on f4, we're not going to take back. Knight goes to h5, and the idea is g7 plus on f6 winning. And here, well, the game is just over. There's no good way to defend both of these squares. Of course, the same idea would have happened earlier, especially if you had grabbed the rook, except it would have been far worse. After something like queen h6, knight takes on a1, knight h5, it is now forced checkmate. Checkmate on g7 cannot be stopped. Okay, back to the game. After e takes f4, knight h5, f5, rook a d1, a nice tempo move here. You could go ahead and play knight f6 check and take the queen, but why not get your rook out to the game and not allow them to grab the exchange? Remember, even though these may be weaker pieces, they will add up at the end. And well, when you're playing a good chess game, take your time. There's no need to rush for any kind of resolve with these kind of positions. Queen to e5. Now we're going to go check. Takes, and of course queen has sacrifice, and queen takes on f6. The rest of the game is pretty easy now. Although the pieces might be a little bit equal, It's just not going to be any good here for black just because the king is too weak. And also, well, these pieces are just not organized. So the game ends pretty fast here. Knight c5, undefended knight. That's the tactic. Here we create an undefended rook now. Queen g5 check, king h8, queen to e7, attacking both. Bishop to a6 here. There is no good way to defend. Even if knight d7 gets played, you can simply take on d7 here and win back material. So, bishop a6, queen takes c5, takes and takes, and I mean you're just down a full exchange of the queen here. So Benko went ahead and threw in a towel. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this game. Unheard Melodies. We'll see you in the next one.